Here's my 2 cents worth. You can't call yourself a free speech crusader if you too are part of the problem. We need to resist all kinds of censorship in this country, whether that be the people in colleges and universities, or whether it be governors in states who want to censor protests or history books. Yes, believe it or not, contrary to popular belief, some of the same people who crusade to be free speech warriors are themselves not only against the principle of the First Amendment, but make laws that are legitimately unconstitutional. At least the so-called liberals in higher education aren't actively making laws to ban certain words and phrases. No, that's left to the wonderful 4th branch of government that we now know as Silicon Valley. And I'm not saying that that's not a problem, of course it is, along with the fact that they get massive tax breaks while their executive makes tens of millions of dollars. But I'll save that one for another time. No, it's the governors who have literally signed laws protecting wrongful censorship from these platforms who have been the opposite of the un-American coin. The right-wing PC police. That's right, people like Governors Greg Abbott of Texas or Ron DeSantis of Florida are prime examples of this. Take DeSantis, for example, a man who is so anti-PC that when Major League Baseball decided to move the All-Star game from Atlanta to Denver, he said this, quote, "I guess they have the right to do what they want, but if you're going to stick your beak into issues that don't directly concern you, then I think elected officials are going to stick their beak into issues that may not concern them." And stick to those issues he has. He approved House Bill 1 in Florida, which made it to where people engaged in peaceful protests or innocently in the same area when a demonstration happened to turn violent could face criminal charges and stiff penalties. It was enacted, of course, after the Black Lives Matter, George Floyd protests and riots of 2020. Now, not only is this a problem as the ones who define when a protest happens to become violent are those in a position of power, it also creates tougher penalties for blocking public streets during an unlawful assembly. Except there was more than one kind of protest in Florida after this bill got passed. The SOS Cuba protesters, who were frustrated with food shortages and financial issues of the communist government of Miguel Diaz-Canel, also blocked roadways in cities like Miami, Orlando, Tampa, and other large cities. Now, under that same law that DeSantis passed, House Bill 1, they should have been detained, but what did Mr. DeSantis have to say about that? Quote, "These demonstrations are distinct of those that followed the death of George Floyd." So, in other words, I can pick and choose which protests are acceptable. Not only is that extremely dangerous, it is complete and utter hypocrisy. That's like saying you hate golf because you find it boring, but you turn around and watch 4 hours of the World Series of Poker. Or how about Greg Abbott of Texas, who encouraged state agencies to block books that prominently feature LGBTQ characters or other books on subjects like race, calling them, quote, pornographic or obscene material. Except his Texas Education Agency, which ironically when shortened would be named T, has also tried to get involved by teaching their version of history by replacing the word slavery with involuntary relocation in state standards for second graders. How about our former President Trump, who absolutely hated cancel culture, but was the main driver in getting Colin Kaepernick, the former quarterback of the San Francisco 49ers, canceled and even suggested that he be driven from the country. Or let's even go more locally for a second. A teacher at Whitney High School last year was investigated for having a quiz question that read, quote, "A group of idiots, A, KKK, B, all of Florida, C, Fox News, and D, Texans." Now, regardless what you think about that, you gotta give the guy a little bit of credit. He actually put us on national headlines. That's something that hasn't happened since the stupid tanker fire incident here in Lincoln in 2011. Now, was it a dumb thing to do? Yeah, probably so. But you know what else was pretty childish and lame? At a Rockland High football game last season, it was USA night, which is great. You should celebrate your country. However, the student section was chanting F Joe Biden, which to the credit of the administration was publicly frowned on, and I'm sure that those kids had a talking to. And by the way, I absolutely love the school, love covering them, love watching the team, and trust me, I certainly agree with their sentiment. But it's the principle of why was there more of a backlash for the former than the latter? This isn't a new thing either. In 2006, at the College of William and Mary, there was outrage after a cross was taken off of a public academic building when then Dean Gene Nickel was concerned about the separation of church and state. That next year, a group called the Sex Workers Art Show, a well-reviewed variety show of performances and speeches by former sex workers, was demanded to be blocked. but Nichols cited free speech. Where were all of the free speech warriors when that was going on defending that guy? And that's the thing, they weren't there, because really cancel culture is a cancer that is infested in the extremes on both sides of today's political world. It is the reason why we are so divided culturally and politically today. Issues like these are ones that the media and the politicians love because it means that we don't have to actually address and talk about the real issues of working people in this country. The true answer to this issue is to let people believe in what they want and say what they're going to say as long as it doesn't advocate or commit an act of violence. Voltaire once said, quote, "I disagree with what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it." I'm worried that in 300 years' time from now, if we make it that far, people will be reading today's philosophers that will say, quote, "I disagree with what you say, now get the hell out of this country and die." I will leave with this quote. All we say to America is to be true to what you said on paper. Somewhere I read of the freedom of speech. Who said that, you might ask? It was Martin Luther King Jr. That was his quote. He was a great unifier of his era, and now we desperately need one in ours. And that's my 2 cents worth, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in this week. We'll be right back again next week. Once again, if you agree with what I say, disagree with what I say, let me know in the comments below. I will see you guys next time. Until then, you guys take care. Peace out.